Hi, I'm Shawn Charles Baker, and I'm here to tell you about my new book, Murder Virus, which is up for pre-order at barnesandnoble.com and Amazon, anywhere that you order books. There's a pandemic of violence flooding the streets of major cities all around the world, and as cases of the media-dubbed murder virus, MV20, soar, everyone infected goes on a non-stop killing spree. Caught in the middle of all this in downtown Seattle is police detective Angela Miller, and her only trustworthy ally is the self-proclaimed psychic detective Gerald Henry. So as these two try to navigate the violence, they are drawn into New Age guru Abramelin Harvest's plot to heal the planet. Harvest's missive: the world is sick and humanity is the infection. The cure? You guessed it, murder. Up for pre-order, barnesandnoble.com, Amazon, anywhere that gets books can get it for you. Hello, welcome to another episode of A Most Horrible Library. I'm Shawn Baker.
And I'm Chris Saunders.
And we're here to talk all things horror, comics, literature, and, everything else that might entail or kind of segue into.
A little from column A and a little from column B.
Yeah. What's going on, Chris?
Not too much. It's been a pretty good week of reading. Couple things that have come out recently, a couple things that are brand new.
Hit me. Tell me about one of them.
Let me see. Well, probably one of my favorite things that I've read over the last couple of weeks here was the Hellraiser shit. I wish I read some Hellraiser. The Hellblazer Rise and Fall that came out recently through DC Black Label. It was just a 3-issue series that was presented in that larger magazine type format. It was written by Tom Taylor, and it had art by one of my favorite artists, Derek Robertson, who a lot of you might be more familiar with as the artist of Garth Ennis's The Boys. And it was a great story that really kind of touched back on a young John Constantine, dug in a little bit about his early family life and his older friendships. You read this one too, right, Shawn?
Yeah. I have been desperately wanting to like anything that Black Label puts out in that beautiful, I don't know if it's called magazine format, or I heard somebody recently refer to older books that are in roughly the same size as Treasury.
Well, I know that when you go to put it into a bag and board, the actual issue itself, it does fit into the magazine bags and boards.
Yeah.
As well as the magazine sized boxes.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of always how I equated it.
Yeah, I really, that what was the Batman Damned was the first one, and that obviously was such a success sales wise that it's now, everything Black Label does, I think, comes out in that format. And there's been a lot of them. That's
because everybody loved that bat penis.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say I bought all 3 of those and I hated it. I mean, I thought it was one of the worst stories. Nothing happened. It was just an excuse the illustrations were great, but it was really just an excuse to parade around a bunch of his rogues gallery and really not do anything, I thought, at all story wise. So I sold it as soon as it was done. I got like $80 for it.
Yeah. I mean, I like to look at that one as kind of an experiment into, DC doing, DC had, for years done that kind of mature imprint with Vertigo. But with this, the DC Black Label, I feel like it kind of made it a bit more all-encompassing for their ability to use DC characters properly. You know, we really didn't have any Vertigo, Batman stories. We didn't have any Vertigo Superman stories, that were like dedicated to them, to their own. Occasionally, yeah, Batman would show up in, Sandman or something like that, just for a little cameo.
Right.
But I mean, that was one thing that kind of got me excited about the Black Label imprint, was that we can see some more mature kind of R-rated stories featuring a lot of the characters that we grew up with, in addition to, getting some of those kind of, older characters from the past. I know that they put out a run of The Question on Black Label. I thought it was great.
I actually wanted to read that one, and it was gone before I was even aware that it existed.
Yeah. I mean, in fact, even Sean Murphy's Batman White Knight, all of those are all being put out through DC Black Label now.
But those, they've not changed the size for, correct? I think those are still standard. That
is correct. Yeah, there are some books that are still in the regular size format through Black Label. Not a whole lot of them. I mean, most recently I can think of is the Jeff Johns Batman: The Three Jokers. That was still in the regular comic size, but it was a Black Label run.
It's interesting that when you bring up the Vertigo and kind of how, although Batman would pop up in maybe a Vertigo title, or like Superman immediately pops up in my head. I picture that whatever issue he is in, Alan Moore's Swamp Thing. Since they collapsed so DC was weird because they started doing that kind of sophisticated suspense thing, I believe, with Alan Moore's Swamp Thing, and then they spun Vertigo off of that. So originally that wasn't Vertigo, but that became Vertigo, right? So then it was rebranded.
Yeah.
So there was that thing where those characters would cross between those two imprints, if you will, but they largely stayed for the majority. Like if a Batman book came out, it wasn't Vertigo. There might have been exceptions to that, but I know what they did in the late 80s, around the time that, or I guess it would have been 90, around the time Tim Burton's Batman film came out, and Bat hysteria ruled. They did that Legends of the Dark Knight series, which was kind of curated 5-issue, or it started as 5-issue arcs done by creative teams that were more sophisticated. So
yeah, I think you had touched on one of these stories, I think in our first episode, maybe.
Yeah, maybe that's the one that always, the Grant Morrison, Claus Janson. It's 6 through 10 of that series, and it always rings to me as like it's my favorite Batman story. And
which one was that exactly?
It's known as
Gothic. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But so I think that was their attempt. That book was their attempt originally to do a more mature place that wasn't Vertigo for Batman.
Yeah. I mean, and we had a couple of those pop up through the years. I know that there was the I'm blanking. I shouldn't be blanking on this. On the author, but the illustrated by Bernie Wrightson, Batman Cult.
Oh, I have that. That was Prestige format. That was around the same time. I forgot about that. That's Jim Starlin.
Yeah, there it is.
Jim Starlin and Bernie Wrightson. Yeah. And that's another one. So that's a good example. I'm glad you brought that up, because that wasn't Legends of the Dark Knight. But I think they also did that at the time, where the more mature stuff would be like Prestige format.
Yeah, they would just be these little kind of pocket universe stories that didn't really pertain or follow into the whole, the general Batman story arcs as a whole. They were just their own little things.
Wow, I've really digressed us here. That Rise and Fall. Another thing I really always want to like is John Constantine as a monthly book that I feel like he gets watered down. The last couple of times I tried to read a Constantine book, my thing is, since they've kind of moved him into the DC universe and out of the Vertigo thing, he's a little bit more
mainstream. He's a bit more watered down.
He's lost his edge. Like, there's really an edge to that character, and this brings it back. This totally brings it back, because one of the things that gives him his edge is John Constantine has betrayed or either accidentally or sometimes purposely caused the death of everybody he's ever been close to. And so it's mentioned often that he has this like procession of like souls waiting for him when he dies. And this kind of goes back and touches on that. And like, here's some more lives that John destroyed. And here's, what has happened. And I just enjoyed seeing that side of him again. And it was cool seeing like a very young Constantine light a cigarette and perform like a black magic ritual to try and impress some older girl, and then have it go completely awry.
At like age 12. Like super young, like in his little prep school outfit. Yeah. But I mean, I really like how, there's a whole little line in here where he says, I know something about guilt. You see, I was born guilty. And then it cuts to a shot of a headstone that says, Marianne Constantine, beloved wife of Thomas and mother of Cheryl, who died to bring us John. Yes. Because his mother died shortly after childbirth. And then it spirals from there that is a reason why his father, who at the very beginning of the series, looks nice, clean cut, he's very happy to see his brand new baby boy. And then it does a smash cut to, his father, bottle of booze, wearing a wife beater, cigarette in his mouth stubbly, yelling at John because he blames John for the death of his wife. And it really gets into that, like, because of his dad coming down on him so much when he was growing up, that is really what kicked off his development his development of disrespect for authority and authority figures, which translates on and on to even disrespecting, Satan himself.
Like everything. Like he holds no authority in any kind of regard. And I don't know if I certainly never read the entirety of the original Vertigo run.
It's a long run.
Well, and only within the last, I'd say, 10 years did they actually, like, there used to be huge gaps in what they collected. And I don't know how much his parents have come up before. I know they have, but I don't know if this is the first time we're seeing this. So I think it is. So that's really interesting because, I mean, imagine having that on your mother's tombstone.
Oh, yeah.
Like, who died to bring us John. Like, Jesus Christ, there's a reminder etched in stone every day.
Anytime you go to visit the gravesite or any of that kind of stuff.
It does motivate, I mean, one of the things I think a lot of people, certainly myself, I love about him is his punk rock beginnings, and that, like, he was very much a product of what was going on in the real world in the late 70s with punk rock and chaos magic, and this kind of, the death of the hippie 60s had led into this,
and this whole and especially over there in England, there was a whole big kind of Aleister Crowley revival. Look at the back of Led Zeppelin 4, man.
Right.
No, I'm just I don't know.
No, it's not the back, it's the fold out in the actual if you hold the wizard up to the glass, it becomes a demon. It's amazing. But it was a really good series. Now, I'd imagine it'll be collected soon. I know I've seen a solicitation for it's either a hardcover or a trade. I think that when they do that, they put them in the regular size. So I don't know what that's going to look like.
Yeah, I hope they don't, because, Derek Robertson, his artwork, it looks great on a large scale.
It does.
Okay, so the basic premise here with Hellblazer Rise and Fall is, so like we said, we see a young John Constantine, and he tries to summon a demon late at night out in the rain with two of his friends. One is a slightly older girl named Aisha that he's trying to impress, and the other is I'm blanking on the boy's name. There was a younger Billy was his name. who inadvertently through this ends up getting killed. Not necessarily because of John. Essentially, a river ends up getting flooded, and all three of them kind of get swept away in it. Aisha and John, they end up being all right, but poor Billy, he drowns to death. And because John had gotten them to go out there at night, everybody blames John for the death. And then we kind of flash forward to present time, and Aisha, she's grown up to become a police detective. Her and her partner Gary, they kind of go out for they finally have a night off, so they head out to go down to the pubs. And while they're doing that, they end up finding the naked body of a man with large feathery wings impaled upon the top of a cross on the top of a church.
It's a great scene too.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And and then little by little, John Constantine kind of comes into the story. And it just does, kind of, he pairs up with them in order to try to help them track down who this killer is. And along the way, I think it was specifically in the second issue, our favorite Lucifer Morningstar shows up. And now I was really kind of intrigued by the way that they chose to portray him in this run, appearance-wise. He doesn't look like the like the Sandman Lucifer run, blonde, David Bowie type. He is straight up the devil. He red skin, little horns, little goatee.
So, but it seemed like they had kind of gotten rid of the idea of Lucifer being that Lucifer that we're referring to from the old Vertigo days. So did you read this as being that Lucifer?
Yeah.
Okay.
I suppose I did, just seeing Constantine, and just even referring to him as, Lucifer Morningstar, so I don't know if he just chose to take on that appearance for whatever reason. I don't know, but I mean, for me, a lot of the personality of this interpretation of Lucifer Morningstar, I felt was more in line with the television series.
Okay.
So he was a bit more comical.
Yeah, definitely.
And, a bit snarkier. He wasn't as serious. But I got to say, I loved this interpretation of Lucifer. You really did kind of get a sense of camaraderie between the two of them.
I liked everything about this series.
Now, one thing I do want to touch on is that I loved the little Easter eggs that were in the first issue of Rise and Fall. The doctor who delivers baby John was Dr. Delano.
Oh yeah.
Which is an obvious nod to the creator, Jamie Delano.
Or not creator, but the first writer, because Moore created him.
Oh yeah. Well, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And then later on, when they're all going to the pub, they go to the Dylan.
Yeah.
Which I thought that was that was great. A little nod to Steve Dillon, who drew Hellblazer for quite a long time with when Garth Ennis was writing.
Yeah, and passed away a few years ago.
Yes, he did. Yeah, unfortunately.
If I can segue into another title that is tangential, I don't know what DC has Future State now. I don't know what that is. It's another like restart for their continuity or something. I'm not entirely sure. I don't really care. But the reason I bring it up is, I guess it spins out of, they've had all these titles like death metal and
Yeah, none of them have really grabbed me.
Now,
You know,
Deceased or Dead Planet or something like that, I tried to read, and Constantine it looked like he was kind of instrumental in that. I just didn't really, I don't know, I didn't care for it. It seemed almost like Marvel Zombies in a way, which I don't care for
that's
either.
that's pretty much what it is.
What caught my attention was there's a new Swamp Thing
Hmm.
going on, and I bought the first issue kind of on a lark. It's written by Ram V and drawn by Mike Perkins, colors by Mike Spicer, Aditya Bidikar as letterer. And I looked at it, and it had kind of a Vertigo look. I think one thing that listeners will realize is we both kind of chase that Vertigo feeling.
Oh yeah.
Also, as I've complained about before on previously on Drinking with Comics, one of the things that had turned me off on reading any monthlies by DC a couple years ago was every time I picked one up and looked at it, there was a Snickers ad featuring like Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman within the first 5 pages, and I'm just like, I know I'm not going to pay $3.99 and have to. It just something about that like was a sticking point for me. I'm like, nope, Snickers ad, not into it. There's no Snickers ads anymore. I don't know if it's because of the way they changed their distribution, but it's only. I mean, there's still a ton of ads. It's annoying, but they're all for DC stuff. So at least it's not. I don't know. But anyway, this seems like a pretty horrific take on Swamp Thing, which is, I really feel like that's how Swamp Thing should be.
Oh, of course.
When he's used more in like a superhero capacity, I'm always annoyed because I don't know. There's something so hokey to me about some of the DC characters where it's like anybody standing next to this plant monster is not going to be having like a rational conversation with him if they've never encountered him before. It's horrific.
Yeah, exactly.
So this definitely seems like that. It's not what's his name? Alec, the original man that Swamp Thing is always paired with, who he uses his body. I'm blanking on the name. It's a totally different character now. And I thought the idea was they were bringing him out of kind of the United States and going to move him to India.
Huh?
But I don't know if that is actually going to be the case now. But at any rate, I don't know. The way the issue started, it reminded me a lot of a Vertigo story where everything's not centered around the main character and the namesake of the book all the time. So it starts with lawmen investigating a grisly murder in the desert, and they go into talking about this like, oh, next thing you're going to do is tell me that because the body's so fucked up that it's the Pale Wanderer. And they go into this kind of story about this person who came out with the railroads and kind of tried prospecting, or came out actually in the Civil War, and then ended up like trying to make his way prospecting and ended up kind of wandering out into the desert and disappearing and becoming something else, so that then there's sightings of him. Like at some point he doesn't look human anymore. He's drinking oil as sustenance, and periodically will wreak havoc and kill people. And so it's this kind of like this legend, and it looks like it's going to introduce. So Swamp Thing is this archetype that Alec Holland, that was the name I was looking for. It will possess a human, but it's this archetypal like representation of some aspect of the earth. Like in this case, the green. I think Scott Snyder was kind of instrumental in like fleshing that out.
It's essentially the Swamp Thing's touches into the green, which is very much like Barry Allen touching into the Speed Force.
Okay,
it's just like it's just the thing that makes him where he taps his powers from. Rather than just having the powers all on his own. Right.
But so it looks like this Pale Wanderer is going to be kind of an archetype for like the desert. So it looks like he's going to take on and like when they meet, it seems like he's going to like instruct him on what he's going to try and tell him what he is. But it looks like I'm just projecting that the Pale Wanderer is going to have a much more malevolent interpretation of what he is than what Swamp Thing will ultimately be. I don't know. I guess it's a 10-issue series. And so far, based on the writing and the art and just the story, I'm definitely willing to give it a shot. For people listening to this podcast, so I think this first issue, check it out and you might dig it. To close the door perhaps on the DC portion of it, what else, you read anything else that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I read this one that you had recommended to me, Dead Dog's Bite.
Dark Horse.
From Dark Horse, written by Tyler Boss. And who the hell is the artist? Is the artist Tyler Boss too?
I believe it is.
Yeah. Okay. Obviously I need to see where it goes. I don't know if this one would be considered horror. But this very much feels Twin Peaks-y to me.
Yeah.
This feels very, very David Lynch. As far as the characters, every single character is a bit quirky, has a bit, the thing literally starts off with a man in a powder blue suit crawling out of a manhole cover in the middle of the street and addressing, breaking the fourth wall and addressing the audience, as, hey, I'm the narrator. You're going to be, if you find yourself astonished by the events forthcoming, know that I'm simply relating them to you as they happened, the cold, hard facts. And it just goes on from there. And it is just a weird story. It's almost like you kind of matched up Twin Peaks with Fargo is kind of what
that's a really good description. That's a really good description. The thing that made me pick this up was I saw like a quote that said Twin Peaks meets Lady Bird. I have not seen Lady Bird, but I kind of get the general aesthetic of it. So, really, once I see Twin Peaks, I don't need to see anything else. I'm just immediately going to try it more often than not. Sometimes it'll annoy me if they compare it, but this...
Yeah, there are a lot of things that, Twin Peaks has become that kind of, it's really Twin Peaksian and this and that. Like it's more of a buzzword. Yeah. I feel, but looking into this, there is a lot of just really weird shit that happens in it, from, basically the whole premise is that there's this missing girl, and her name is Cormac Guffin, which I found hilarious because essentially she's MacGuffin.
Yeah, yeah.
Which in the film world, a MacGuffin is just a term for literally anything that moves the plot along. In the Hitchcock Psycho, it was the MacGuffin was the suitcase full of money that Janet Leigh stole. It could have been anything. It could have been diamonds. It could have been, the briefcase in Pulp Fiction is probably one of the most well-known MacGuffins. It's just merely something to get characters from point A to point B. So it's really funny that, they're looking for this girl, Cormac Guffin, I should say, because I don't think she is going to be a very big part of the story. It's more about the characters that are in this. The
small town is just kind of the main character, right? Pender Mills.
Mills.
And, going with the MacGuffin thing, I feel like a lot of times the MacGuffin is something, like Pulp Fiction is a great example, or Kiss Me Deadly is the old noir that has this too, where it's like you never actually see what's in the briefcase, right? Mm-hmm. So it's kind of doesn't matter. So the thing with Twin Peaks always was Laura Palmer's murder was never supposed to be solved. It was supposed to fade into the background. It was just your entryway into this other story or, succession of stories. And of course, the network famously didn't get it and made them actually solve it. But I'm thinking that that's what they're going to do here, is that this missing girl is really irrelevant. Ultimately, it's going to get you in this place, in this story, to see meet these other people and hear these other stories. I don't know if it will be horrific. It definitely has a dark thriller vibe to it. And it's got my attention. It's weird enough. I mean, it could end up being weird for the sake of weird at this point. I'm not quite sure, which would kind of annoy me, as it usually does. But I don't know. It's definitely interesting.
Yeah. I mean, there's all sorts of weird shit that's going on, that's packed into this first issue, from Mr. Powder Blue Suit narrator to is it a cop who is literally gluing photos of this girl that says missing,
the milk cartons,
onto milk cartons, to a pharmacy guy with 2 broken arms who never, who begins to tell the story of how he broke his arms twice, but never does.
Yeah.
To this town mayor who wears this red and white cowboy suit, who is holding a candlelight vigil for this girl who's only been missing for 3 days.
Yeah, right. They're all acting like she's dead, and like the best friend, she's like not understanding why everybody's acting the way they're acting. It's really weird.
Yeah, and a lot of it has to, there's this there's even a part that doesn't even really get addressed, where on stage with the mayor, there is a woman that they refer to as Old Lady Pendermills. And for whatever reason, she's wearing a black and white striped full body suit with like a partial like mask over her eyes.
Yeah.
And they never really address it. They just kind of say like, oh yeah, there she is. And
really strange.
Yeah, it's it's a very bizarre book, and just and you watch it and you don't really, is the guy in the blue suit, is he really there or not? Because he just kind of shows up, like literally pops up in places, and then towards the end you see him literally in a taxi cab, getting out of a taxi cab and walking over to where the main character gal is, and it's really fucking weird, but I like it.
Wait, and he stands right next to her and speaks, but they don't speak to one another. So I'm like, does she even know he's there? Like, it's really, I'm in. I'm definitely looking forward to the next issue in April, just to see, where it's going.
Yeah, and just the dialogue is fucking bizarre.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So what else you got?
Another one, I just picked this one. I don't know anything about this. I hadn't heard anything about it. I picked it up again on a lark. Writer John Arcudi, artist Valerio Giangordano.
Nice. I would not have been able to pronounce that.
Two Moons. First issue came out through Image, I guess, either February or March. I'm not really sure. I'd not heard anything about it. I just saw it and it grabbed me.
February 2021.
You said you read this one too?
Yes, I did. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah.
It has a really interesting premise to it. I'll let you go ahead and sum it up.
It's a civil war, and you're kind of following somebody who's there but is probably too young to be there, and like is wet behind the ears, and the people around him are all kind of seem like they're hardened war vets at this point. Mm-hmm. And there's some kind of like mythology about like a creature or something on these planes, and they encounter it. In fact, it seems like it's one of the officers in his platoon. I think the thing that made me pick it up, other than in flipping through it, the scene where the sergeant or whatever he is turns after being shot in the heart with a musket ball is very like It's a great image, and I'm just really curious. Like, I'm like, is this a werewolf? It doesn't look like a werewolf. I don't know what it looks like, but it is really horrific looking.
You know what it looks like? It looks like a critter.
It does. It's crazy looking. And then also, like, the next issue splash page at the end, after he's, you know, it like you said, he turns after shooting this beast, and you realize the platoon has seen him kill his sergeant, not a monster. So he's like, oh, you know, you're a murderous traitor. But the image for the next issue is just like, I don't know what the fuck it is, man. It's like a combination of a dog and a man. It's definitely like a native. There's definitely playing with Native American tropes and folklore.
I mean, the easiest way I can sum it up is it looks like an undead Native American werewolf.
Yeah, there you go. I'm thinking his grandfather was a shaman, and he has inherited this shamanic ability, because he doesn't just talk to that could be the grandfather, his doing, manifesting after death and speaking to his grandson. But now we see that dead Confederate soldier speaking to him as well. So, okay, so Two Moons has some inherent power he's unaware of until this point. So I'm really interested to see where this goes, especially because, again, I didn't see anything about this book at all. Like,
yeah, you know, I had seen the solicitation, basically just the cover image, which, you know, it's an image of a you know, man looking straight ahead wearing a you know, Union soldier's outfit. That was it. That was all that I knew about it, and it was called Two Moons, and that was it. Yeah.
So I definitely think it's one, especially everything we're talking about here today. I feel like this is definitely the one that's like, if the listeners take away a new horror title to check out, this would be, I feel like this would definitely be the one.
Yeah, I can back that up. I mean, for me, at least personally, I am a big fan of history, American history. I like stories set in the past like this, and there's definitely a lot of supernatural vibes going on, and that's also big for me. So right when I kind of saw the first couple pages of this, I was like, oh, all right. You know, another one that's in that same kind of, you know, double feature, I would say, is Manifest Destiny, which I'll do another episode talking about that one. You know, which is like kind of Lewis and Clark encountering all these monsters during their whole, you know, trek to the West Coast. You know, but I like a lot of this kind of frontier, old timey, supernatural. You know, the horrors of the American frontier.
Yeah, right. Which I thought was interesting. I read this in that first issue of Swamp Thing in the same day, and so I thought it was really interesting that both had an element of that. You know, obviously, I don't know how much that informs one of the characters in the Swamp Thing. I don't think we're going to get a lot more of it, but and here it's front and center. Obviously, it takes place at that time, but it was kind of a nice little, oh wow, you know. But yeah, I definitely dug this book, and I'm looking forward to more. What else? You got anything else?
I think the last one that I started kind of skimming over is one that you have read, which was the first issue of Karmen from Image Comics, written by how do you say that? Gillum March?
Gillum March, yeah, who I'm totally unfamiliar with.
Well, looking at this, because I did do just a little bit of a search about this. So this is issue number 1 that just came out this March. Again, from Image. But this whole series came out last year in Europe. And it was originally published in French. So that makes me think, is his name like, oh, shit, I'm not even going to try to do a French accent.
We're probably just...
Yeah, the French right now are just shaking their fists, you know, what else?
Exactly.
Stupid Americans.
Exactly.
So I'm going to, really Americanize it and say Gillum March. But yeah, again, I just kind of skimmed this one. So Shawn, you've read the whole thing. Can you give us the rundown?
Yeah, I liked it. Again, I don't know. This is definitely brushing up against horror because it's apparently about a personification of death, which I was saying to you earlier. That is it's kind of, I love Neil Gaiman's personification of death so much that right away I'm like, am I going to be down with this? But so this is what convinced me. Somebody recommended this book to me, and I picked it up and read this, and I was like, okay, the writing is good enough. And now knowing it's probably translated, that's always impressive too, because what might be eloquent and beautiful in its original language doesn't necessarily always translate that way. But this, I feel like it did. So we open with this kind of cosmic shot of an energy, what looks like an energy burst zigzagging through like a pixelated cosmos, maybe. And the captions read, "Sometimes a dream remains clear and leaves us with sensation of reality for a few brief seconds after we wake, long enough for the disoriented mind to adapt to its new state of awareness. Then quickly, the memory of it becomes increasingly indistinct and fragmented until we have completely forgotten it. When we recall it or write about it, it is a version that has been deformed by our thirst for coherence, an ersatz rendering of the dream itself." Right there, I was like, okay, I'll buy the first issue. I thought that was so, I love when people can write the ineffable and kind of translate into the language. That's the thing I've always loved about H.P. Lovecraft, give or take. He's not the best writer. He's a racist pig, but he has these moments where he can translate what should not be able to be rendered into language or understood by a human brain, and he's able to render it in language. And I think that's fascinating and beautiful. And this is kind of along the same lines. And so you get these flashes of whatever this cosmic thing is, and then you meet a young girl and a young boy and their friends, and then you see them kind of grow up, and the friendship gets in the way of the boy dates other girls. So this girl is just that he's been friends with is just a friend to him, and you get the impression that for her that's not the case. And then enter Karmen, who walks in, and it's literally a redhead's face and hair on a skeletal body. It looks like the suits, the Halloween costume you see in Donnie Darko, where it's a black costume with the white skeleton over it.
Yeah.
Goes back to Karate Kid.
Yeah. I was just going to say, you went Donnie Darko. I was going to go Karate Kid, but yeah.
But, that's what she looks like. And so that's what's on the cover, but I assumed it was a costume. And then now you see, no, I think this is her form. And so she walks through this apartment building and finds the grown-up version of this young girl sitting in the bathroom naked, having just cut her wrists. And she does a little song and dance for her. And then kind of slowly the girl becomes aware that, like, oh, am I dead? And then she follows death or Karmen out into the street and leaves her body behind. And it just kind of becomes this weird, and it very much reminds me of Neil Gaiman's Death, and kind of that like whimsical, like, oh, come on, let's go take a walk and tell stories, and
exactly.
Leave your body behind. And I mean, really, that's just it. I have no idea where it's going to go. It was a very unique first issue, and I probably pick up the second one. I don't know how long the series is going to be. I haven't really looked into that, but I dug the art.
This whole thing, it is written, and all the art is by Gilliam March. Yeah,
so it has that nice, like synergy. It's interesting. I don't know. I was perplexed by it. Like I said, I don't know if we're going to continue to follow Karmen or Death and this same girl, or if she's going to be moving on somewhere else, if we'll get some other idea of how she relates to the cosmos in this, personification. But it was definitely cool. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Now, I had read Two Moons directly before skimming this, and at the end of Two Moons, there actually was a solicitation for this, and the tagline was Karmen, an unconventional angel.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So, just kind of going by this first issue, I am more inclined to think that It's not going to be following the same girl around, that it is going to be just kind of the adventures of Karmen, going around, doing her little thing. But yeah, I mean, so far there's really no, antagonist or anything like that. This very much, the first issue felt like it could have been just a really cool little one-shot story.
Yeah.
But I know that in France, where it was originally published and released last year, there are 2 full trades of this that are available. So if you speak French, you can kind of get a jump on things. Yeah, so I am very curious where this is going to go.
Yeah, same. So we'll see. I mean, there's a lot of first issues, which I feel like I don't think I've had this many first issues for a while. So it's interesting. We'll see, what I hang on to and what I fall off of. But Two Moons, I definitely, that and Dead Dog's Bite, I have a feeling I'm in for the long haul. Yeah,
well, I think that about sums us up for this week's installment of A Most Horrible Library. So we have recently started up a Facebook page as well as an Instagram page, both of which can be found at / A Most Horrible Library on both. Let me see. And we do have, since we are part of the Horror Vision podcast family, there is a Horror Vision community Facebook group where you can go check it out, talk with like-minded individuals. You could talk with us. We are very active on there. You can give us some reading recommendations or just criticisms. You can say, well, what the fuck are you talking about, Two Moons? That book was shit.
I think it's more apt. Somebody's going to be like, why did you spend the first 30 minutes talking about DC books, possibly?
Very true. Very true. Yeah. So, Shawn, where can they find you at?
Oh, you can find me on Twitter. I tend to handle the Horror Vision Twitter, Horror Vision Pod. Also, my handle on my personal handle is @opinionated bastard. But if you just type in Shawn C. Baker, you can find my blog, which I pretty much curate stuff on there every day or almost every day. That's the thing I'm most active on usually.
And you can find me on Facebook at Chris Saunders 666. Because why wouldn't you?
Yeah, right.
And you can also find me on Instagram at Saunders138 because, well, we are.
For independent or any publisher out there, if you want to send us stuff, we would love to read and review and talk to you about it. Maybe have you on. Who are the folks?
The fine gentlemen over at Blood Scream Comics, which is a very independent publishing little company. So yeah, if any of you out there, send us your shit. Definitely. We would love to talk about it. And so for another episode of A Most Horrible Library, I'm Shawn Baker. And I'm Chris Saunders.